210, and everybody has received a copy of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve we do have 6 people on. I don't think we have to call a roll or anything like that. Do we need to call the roll just as a matter of protocol?
I do think so.
Yeah.
All right.
Just to verify we have a quorum.
Okay. Well, we have an established quorum. That's one of the things I have on my agenda, so we'll do that. But so let's go ahead and do that. Let's call the roll. Dr. Pamela Walker.
Yes, and I just want to clarify, Chairman, I'm not a doctor.
Well,
But-
in the black church,
but
in the
I
black
play
church, we're
one.
all doctors. In the black church, we're all doctors. So, all right.
I'm
So,
playing one when necessary,
all
so.
right.
Ah, no, that's
All
right.
right. So Pam Walker,
Oh, here.
Dr. Charles Norris.
Here, and I am not a doctor as well.
Why do I?
I
I've been calling you
Everybody wanna
doctor
make
for
noise.
3 years.
I keep saying it.
Okay.
But now it's on public record.
All right. Alderman Joe Vaccaro. You are an alderman, right?
Last time I checked, they haven't thrown me out yet.
All right.
I'm president.
Thank you. Alderman Jeffrey Boyd.
Present, and I am an alderman. You're right.
Adolphus Pruitt.
Yeah, I'm here and I'm gonna claim doctor and bishop.
Brad,
That means we're gonna have an offering today.
Brad, pronounce your last name for us, Brad.
It's Hump.
Hump. Okay, Brad Hump.
I am here.
And
I'm
Senator.
also not a doctor.
All right. And we have as a resource, Brian Champion is our resource person. And Commissioner Dale Glass is a resource person with the CJC.
Where did Dale go? He was here.
I'm
Yeah,
here.
Dale's, he's here. And Senator
there you
Nasheed, Senator Nasheed was on. She said that she will be returning. So we do have, everyone say except Senator Nasheed. We're going to get down in our order of business to determining a quorum. I suspect 50% plus one, but I'm not going to assume that. I suspect that the task force will determine what that quorum is going to be. My remarks are just simple. Thank you all once again. I know there's a challenge, the severity of the inclement weather. And so we do, thank you very much for continuing the effort. I wanted to thank you also for, and I didn't get a chance to do it at the last meeting, to thank you for the confidence that you've placed in me as the chair. I do understand that my role is simply to help to facilitate the agenda and keep us focused on the agenda. And so I just want to thank you for the confidence you placed in me. To Brian and Pam and Brad, since the last meeting to this meeting, the work that you've done thus far has been phenomenal over the holiday weekend at that. And so thank you. Once again, we made it very clear our role. We've got a task that's been given to us. This task force was created by the mayor. We understand what our role is. 3 points to investigate the alleged concerns and complaints regarding food, water, temperature, and clothing. 2, the need to begin moving cases through the 22nd Judicial Circuit and any other measure possible to address the isolation uncertainty resulting from the halting of court cases for nearly 1 year due to COVID-19 pandemic. And 3, to become apprised of the urgent building and equipment needs of the facility, which is approximately 20 years old. And at our last meeting, we did talk about the reality of our task. And so our agenda is going to reflect those 3 things. We've talked about the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as it has been sent out to include Varia?
Move to.
So moved.
Been moved by Reverend Norris and seconded by Alderman Vaccaro. You've heard the motion. Are you ready for the question? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Our agenda is, as has been sent out to include Varia. My remarks, I've already made them. My hope anyway, is that we would be able to focus on some short-term recommendations. We understand that this is time sensitive. We've got an administration that has, I think, 2 months or less. I think the concern is how much can we do within the time that we have? And the hope is that we would be able to focus on short-term recommendations and long-term recommendations. Those things that we can get done immediately, that is our hope. I would ask at this time 2 things. Number one, that we look at adding to the agenda, I guess, a vice chair in the event that I am not available, so that nothing is stalled, that we would add that to the agenda. And number 2, that we would add to the agenda a quorum. So I should have said that earlier, but those would be the 2 things: to determine what the quorum is and to select the vice chairperson. And those are the only things that I have. One of the things that I will not do, I won't cut anybody off in any discussion. I think it's important for all of us to be able to ask whatever questions we need to ask and to provide whatever information that we want to provide. But we do want to try to keep the task force meetings as much as possible within that 1.5 to 2 hour period, unless there's a need to go forward. If there's a need to go any longer than that, we'll only do that by approval of the task force as a whole. And so with that, we will ask Brian if he would begin business from the minutes. If you would bring us up to date on those things that we have asked and or instructed you to do, give us an update on where we are, and then based upon the documentation that you've sent out.
Happy to do so. So since last Friday's meeting, we've been busy. As you all know, we received a tentative agenda from Mr. Hump to proceed. And I have scheduled all the tentative events and sent out calendar invites for everything. Meeting and public notice and minutes have all been posted from last meeting, the unapproved minutes at this point, and public notice and agenda for this meeting have been posted and is online. I requested 12 months of minutes from the CJCC as requested by the task force and received that email response in return from Ms. Debbie Allen, which I shared to the task force. I also was sure to let Mr. Hump know that it may provide some more helpful contacts for him to reach the courts like he is trying to do. I have received a few replies in regards to the data requests submitted by Mr. Hump, and I have forwarded that on to the chairman and to Mr. Hump, specifically from Jimmy Edwards and from Judge, I'm going to say his name wrong, Rierker. So I forwarded those on to the chairman and to Mr. Hump as well. Tentatively, a city task force subsite has been created on the mayor's page to host all of this task force's activities. I sent that out for review by the task force and was hoping to get that approved today. As soon as it is, I'm happy to get that website published live. At the bottom of the web page, there's a comment box essentially that will allow for public input, as I'm sure will be discussed later. Similarly, looking to create a task force email to assist with receiving public input as well as scheduling public comments for next week, potentially. And that is in progress as we speak, and I'm hopefully going to hear back from that shortly. Let's see what else I've done. I'm also working essentially on scheduling 10-minute time slots for public input next week, as was discussed on the tentative agenda by Mr. Hump. That essentially wraps up what I've been doing. It's a lot of the behind the scenes administrative, trying to make sure things flow smooth for the task force. And that's just what I'm trying to do.
Okay. I know we have, I think, Brian, we have one thing, the website approval for vote. Before we go to that, are there any questions for Brian? Any questions regarding his report? Information has been requested by task force members through Brian. Are there any questions? Brian, did your report, go ahead, I'm sorry. go
That's
ahead.
not going to be the last request. I know I sent the add some late, but there will, we were just trying to get as much together at one time. But that's not going to be the only request. Is that correct?
No, I have a list that I'm gonna be sending myself.
Sure. So my understanding is, we can continue to request. I know Mr. Hump sent his request for data, and that was a nice compilation of a lot of information that had been sent to him. If anyone has any information that they want to request, feel free to send it to me, and I can send that on to Mr. Hump so he can include it in another request. I'm sure he will talk more about the process of the request since he's more hands-on with actually doing that. I'm just happy to facilitate wherever the information needs to go.
I'd like to just make a comment about, I want to be clear, where we're headed, because we can be requesting a whole lot of data that may bog us down and put us off track from where we're trying to go. So I want to be clear where we're going. This is my understanding. We want to figure out, what led up to the situation that erupted at the Justice Center where they broke windows out and, all the chaos happened. What led up to that? And kind of like, how do we fix it? So I just want to be clear, because we can ask for all kinds of data that would probably keep us around for 6 months at least, if we start getting into the weeds of all of it. And I don't want to dismiss anything that anybody is asking for, because I think everybody is has a right to be here and ask for what they want to ask for. I just don't want to get bogged down in stuff that's not germane to what we're really trying to find out
That's okay.
in this particular instance.
So now I see they got Don
Okay.
around there in the morning. So
Oh, okay.
I guess-
I would just respond that
and then that way you don't-
I think that we are clear about what our task is. I think we are. We've gone over it. I would hope that whatever data
Well, that's-
or information that task force members are requesting, they're making that request because that is information that they feel can better help them to understand, I guess, process, procedure, policy, so that when we get to the point where we are interviewing detainees, CJC staff, vendors, and the like, so that we can move backwards, that people have a clearer understanding of process, policy, and procedure, so that we can make a determination vis-a-vis the events that led up to it. And so just echoing what Alderman Boyd said, just the information that we're requesting, I'm assuming that everybody's requesting that information so that they can be better prepared, enlightened, educated, and informed, that when we get to the point where we have to make a recommendation, that we make it knowing that we had all the information available. And as we said, this is time sensitive. And I think that all of us on here understand that. So let us all be mindful of that as we move forward with seeking it. Dr. Pruitt.
No, I was gonna say, I'm not trying to broaden Brad's arms on how much stuff he can handle, But I think that as long as most of the stuff is going through Brad, and Brad is, I'm quite sure as he take a look at it, if something somebody is asking for is repetitive or it can be contained in something else that we've already asked for and he points that out to him. I mean, I'm saying, let's let Brad manage that until he feels that it is overburdensome or otherwise. But I'm hoping we can rely on him to manage the data request and follow up with individuals where he thinks that data may be already existing in something we asked for, or something we asked for would overlap with it and maybe solve the issue.
Okay. All right.
Hey, Brad.
Yes, ma'am. We're on Brian's,
I would
we're on,
like to,
okay, we're on Brian's report. I'm sorry, Senator, what we did, we said that Brian will give his report,
okay,
Pam will give her report, and then Brad will give his report. So Brian is finishing up his part. We just indicate if there are any questions
Sure.
to Brian.
I'm clear.
Okay. And for everyone, just as a recap, any documentation, any information should go to Brad as our logistics person, our resource person. If that's something he can do, he'll do it. If it's something that needs to be forwarded to Brad, then he'll forward it to Brad. So I think the only item that we have based upon Brad's report, I suspect, is our approval of the website. Website approval. If everybody's had an opportunity to look at that, do we need a vote on that? Can we just agree on that by consensus based on
Yeah.
what he's presented? Anybody disagree?
I'm-
All right, so Brian, we don't have any disagreement on their website, so please move forward on that, and you'll come back with us on a follow-up as it relates to other means of communication vis-a-vis the email and the method between you and Brad on which we will do receive the public testimony and public information.
Right, will
Okay.
do.
All right. So thank you very much, Brian. Pam, not to be confused with Dr. Pam Walker.
All right, I'll try not to play like a doctor. So one of the things that we talked about we needed to do was assess the current conditions in the facilities as relates to COVID, since that was a big concern we all heard and read about. So I developed a tool I hope we can use throughout the process to, one, what's sort of the standard for CDC or a benchmark we can get at Minnesota, because it's right in the middle. They've reduced their cases by 98% since November, so it's a good benchmark. And then I looked at the data and the documentation that was presented on Friday to try to compare. I think there's some gaps in that, and I would like to have Commissioner Glass have an opportunity to look at what I presented and add his piece. And then as we move through the process and we interview medical staff, officers, detainees, we can kind of verify whether what we have from writing from the administration is actually being implemented. So what they gave us on the 12th was their emergency response plan and several memos that were sent out since last March, specifically related to COVID. And they activated their emergency response plan in March. They activated their flu protocols, and the flu protocols kick in all the PPE requirements, the sanitation, some of the separation issues around how to stop the spread of flu in the organization. They train on that plan every year. And it's got a lot of focus on medical, you know, what to do about illness in the facilities. You know, just a real short summary is that they screen everyone. They've suspended social visits. They've suspended exercise. They offer tests. PPE and sanitation supplies are given to everyone. They activated a detainee sanitation crew, which is called for under their flu protocol. They do have quarantine protocols in place. I think we could get some more clarification on how that actually works. All suspected cases in their plan are to go to a hospital. And there's a step down sort of, if this hospital's full, then go to this one. If this one's full, then go to this one. So some of that stuff is really strengths. If I have blanks in that column, it's not because they don't do what's recommended under CDC necessarily. It's just that I didn't see it in the documentation. It's a lot of documentation, so I could have just missed it, and I want to give them the benefit of the doubt on that. The one thing I think we're going to need clarification on is vaccination. The standard recommendation right now across the country is to vaccinate the staff and vaccinate the detainees at the same time. And there's a problem with that in Missouri because Missouri does not have detainees in any of the early phases. They're in the very last phase. So I think we need an update on what the vaccine plan is. And, you know, if any staff is currently getting vaccinated. Now they can get vaccinated in one of the other phases if they meet the age requirement or the health condition requirements. But I know the state corrections department is vaccinating their staff right now, but they're not vaccinating detainees. And I don't think they will give us vaccine for detainees because it's not in their phases. So that's just a real quick summary. I just sent you guys a few minutes ago a more printer friendly version. And it's not necessarily very pretty. I think what we can end up with, and Brad can help with, is at the end, we can come up with our recommendations based on what we have seen in documentation, what's been verified or not verified by interviews, and what we think they could do to improve the situation there. And I think we can, you know, do that pretty fast in the next couple of weeks.
Can I ask a question, Pam? As far as you indicated Commissioner Glass's response. So Commissioner Glass has not had an opportunity to respond to.
Right.
Okay, so just to be clear, and you mentioned the vaccines. I understand the state's protocol. If the state is giving vaccinations to their staff, if we have, for example, like CareSCL has indicated that they would be prepared to support us in doing the testing and the vaccines. Does that mean that if CareSCL has the vaccines available, can they give the vaccines? Is that a breach of any state requirement?
No, they can give it to staff only.
Only staff
They
only?
can't give it to detainees.
Okay, so they still have to follow what the state is doing, and the only other exemption would have to be through a state exemption
Right,
to give it to detainees.
right,
Okay.
right.
All right.
And the testing protocols that are recommended, there's 3 types. There's, you know, the testing for suspect cases or people that are ill. There's testing for close contacts. And then there's facility-wide testing, but that's sort of triggered by outbreaks in most of the recommendations, that if you have a facility-wide outbreak, then you need to test everybody on the same day to kind of see where you are. But I think because we had the situation that we had and the fact that we got a lot of comments about needing to have testing in the facility, it makes sense to do that.
And then my last question before we ask the task force members, mandatory testing. Can you not do mandatory testing for detainees and or guards or correctional staff, just staff period?
Just based on my history with HIV/AIDS and some other things, TB and those sort of things, you cannot do an invasive medical procedure without someone's written consent. So I think because the swab goes up the nose, that's invasive and you can't force anybody to do it. They are working on different types of tests now that like quick tests, saliva tests. You can do a saliva test on someone. Just to see if you have antibodies is a blood test. So that I don't ever see that happening, but it doesn't really tell us much. We're trying to find illness. And so it's, it's sort of a mix. I think with the current tools that we have, it can't be mandated.
Thank you. Task force members, do you have any questions of Ms. Walker?
I
Mr.
had
Chair.
one.
Okay, Dr. Norris?
Regarding the detainees receiving the vaccine, or make sure I understand, there are no plans for detainees to ever have the vaccine. Is that what I thought you said?
My understanding is they're in the very last phase.
Okay.
So we have 5 phases. And the first phase, as you know, are elderly, and then over 65. And then 1B is anybody with under 65 with a medical condition that qualifies, and first responders and medical workers. So that's what they're trying to vaccinate now, and there's not enough vaccine for that. The hospitals right now in their systems are focusing on people 75 and older to try to stretch it. I think we'll get there. We've increased vaccine by 40% shipments to the states. So, and we're almost up to 1 million vaccinations a day. So I think we'll get there quickly. The next group are essential services like restaurants and grocery stores, hopefully teachers, but I think that's not clear. And so it's a long ways before you get to that bottom tier where the detainees would be. And I think the question's still out there. The kids are in the last tier, but I think there's questions about whether we will ever vaccinate kids unless they have a health condition that requires it. There's a lot of testing going on with that right now.
So I know we spoke last week about the possibility of getting all of those detainees tested who would like to be tested so that we can kind of weed out, who may have COVID versus who may not have COVID. So how far did we get with that, and where are we with that? Are we looking to those individuals tested this week or next week?
Well, I think it's 2-part. One is we have to actually request it from the mayor. And I think Brian sent you guys an email that the chairman would send out that says the 11 steps that we want to take to get this done. And that was in there along with the health inspection. So I think that has to happen. And then we need somebody to help us do that. And Chairman Gray, I think you can add to that possibility. I think it can get done pretty quickly, but we need somebody to formally authorize them to come in and do that and get it set up. CDC has great protocols.
So we don't have the option to be able to do that as a task force working independently from the mayor's office, because we actually work independently from the mayor. That's what a task force does, right? And so even though we get guidance, but I mean, there is no way that we can collectively say this is what we want to do and then go out and look for those individual partnerships to be able to make it happen.
Well, that's what we're.
But do we have, or do we have to?
Well, what we did,
go
we
through the
submitted,
mayor's
and we're submitting, and we wanted your approval on this. And all of you, it was sent out, this draft to the mayor so that we are clear, where we indicated we convened the first meeting. It was productive, so forth and so on. We're asking that the appropriate city employees be tasked with addressing these action steps for us we believe that we should accomplish these next week. So that was last week. We're sending it today with your approval, and they have the 11 requests, and one of them is to hold a special day of testing for all detainees and staff. CARE STL has indicated a willingness to assist with this. So we're making sure that we have the necessary staff. And your question is a good question, Senator. If we submit these 11 action steps to the mayor, do we approach the various department heads, or do we give her these 11 steps and say to her, these are the recommendations that we're recommending right now. We want you to send those to the appropriate department heads and let's move forward with it. And so your question is a good question, which is why we wanted to Ms. Walker and I, as we crafted this letter to the mayor, that's what we're asking her to do. And so all of you did receive it, and that is in that letter.
I looked at the CDC protocols for prison-wide testing or jail-wide testing, and it's pretty complicated as far as staffing, access, social distancing, getting people out of their jail cells to get it done. So I think it's going to take a partnership between a medical provider like CARE St. Louis and the corrections staff to do it right. It's pretty intense.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
But wouldn't we also have to get funding for that from ENA? Or is that something that is no cost?
No cost. CARE STL has indicated that they do have the resources to do it, and they're prepared to bring their folk over. Once again, as Ms. Walker said, these 11 action items we submit to the mayor, we were created through the mayor's office. So we submit these to the mayor and say, based upon what we have reviewed thus far, these are the things that we are recommending that we're able to do right now through your office. And then we will follow up to make sure that they're done, so that as the mayor's office is doing these things, Senator, we can move to do other things that are recommended through the task force.
So the letter, we've already sent the letter to the mayor.
No, we needed to get the approval of the task force. We did send it to the task force, and it is on the agenda for your approval.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I have
Yes.
I have a couple of questions for Commissioner Glass that's related to Pam's report. I think the subject matter, and then Pam, I have a question for you that maybe you can help me out. That's a part of this, because I want to know first, Commissioner. I know you said you had plenty of testing on hand, so I don't know if you ever were able to come back and give us a number of what that volume of testing you had on hand. And then two, because you have that testing, I'm operating under the assumption that you have the authority as managing the facility to determine or set up or conduct testing as you see fit in running the facility. If I'm wrong, help me. And then Pam, what sort of goes along with that is that I want to make sure I'm clear on the state's position, because if the CDC has recommendations as relates, and they only segregate or bifurcate as relates to the type of job you perform, in other words, you're essential worker, and the other two seem to me be across the board, whether it's a detainee or not, and that is age and precondition. Or you saying that because they are detained, they no longer fit up under the CDC, the federal requirements that says if they reach a certain age or they have a precondition, they are in 1A, and you're saying that we're reducing them from being citizens and because they detain, and saying that doesn't apply to them. So I'd love to get your take on that, Pam. But Commissioner, how many tests do you have? And if you have them, you mean you have them and you have to wait for authority from somewhere else to use them?
My response would be similar to what I indicated the last time I met with the committee. We do have tests and they are available upon request. We also monitor and determine if there is illness, and then if we find someone that is positive, we test around that individual and continue it based on the number of positives we get. In terms of the exact number, I have to check again with my medical staff. They initially said they had 1,000 tests, but then they added a caveat about some of them are the initial tests they received from the health department. I don't know what that means. I was hoping that when Ms. Walker talks to my medical staff, they could sort that out. If we're talking about mandatory, then I find that different than what I am currently doing, and would want to talk to the administration about where we go from there. I hope that answered your questions. I would add, just if you would like, reference vaccinations. I am aware that we have to follow the guidelines set by the state. I have been voicing my concern that at the very least, those that are detained should be considered with other congregate of people, such like nursing homes. And these are not prisoners in a prison, but citizens that are being detained. Although I think everyone that's in this kind of a living situation arrangement should be at the top of the list. But I understand that there are issues with that. But what we have done is we identified 65 people, pregnancy, over 65, and some of those things that are considered high risk. And we submitted that information to the Director of Public Safety, who's trying to see if we can accomplish that. What we are doing now is talking to those people to see exactly how many are actually desiring to receive a vaccination.
So I want to make sure I'm clear. So it is possible for you to, from this point forward, to re-educate the population immediately on the fact that if somebody's in your population and they feel they want to be tested, and that they can simply notify whatever that chain of command is within your system, and they're going to get that test. And so you can assure us for this point, not that, and I'm not saying it didn't happen in the past, but I just want to make sure I'm clear by saying right now, any detainee that wishes to have a test within the facility can request such and get such, and you will make sure that everybody who needs to understand and to know that articulates that to the population. Is that, can I ask that question?
Of course. And I'm gonna still say that we currently do those things. However, I understand what you're saying, and I will commit to sending my staff out again, my medical staff and my classification, and on a large scale, go around and say, tests are available. We'll encourage it again and see who wants to do it. And I'll make that a concerted effort to do that again. So set a date and talk to the population so that it can address your concerns.
And you'll let us know when that happened and
Yes.
so forth and so on.
Yes.
And how many people got tested.
Yes.
Oh, great, great.
And then I'll wait for further direction in terms of, are we gonna do mandated tests and what my administration says regarding that issue.
I'm
So
opposed to it.
The first part I can do, and I'll talk to my staff and my medical staff and try to get that set up as soon as possible, and let Brian know what those dates and results are.
Senator.
So my question, I have a question, just veggie backing on Dolphus Pruitt. Now, once you let those individual detainees know that they have access to testing, will that be like posted on the bulletin? Do they have like a detainee bulletin that would be posted? Or would your staff go give a letter out to each one of the detainees? I mean, how does it work?
So there's a number of ways we can do information blast. I think that there's value to going around to the units and doing it, because then you have a better opportunity to explain why it's important. We can also post it. And the final thing that I didn't think about until you said something was that we can also add it to the phone. So when they pick up the phone to make a call, that information is there. And they'll hear that.
How about we do all of the above?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
That's what I just wrote down.
Hey, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I got a couple of more.
That's
quick questions.
fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, Dr.
hey,
Pruitt.
yeah, Commissioner, the second question was that, I want to make sure I'm clear. Have you heard of, is it possible that in the confined spaces that you work with, achieving what they call this herd immunity, is that possible in your environment?
So again, and I don't want to try to give you information that I don't know or expert in,
Sure.
but I would indicate to you relevant information is where do we fit on the scale or the phase of when that group will be vaccinated. That's relevant. The other thing that is relevant that I don't feel that I'm getting across is we can't force them. And I think I have a population that is resistant, and not only the detainees, but staff as well. And so I would like that, but the practical individual in me says, you may not reach that point anytime soon.
But I understand that we're not forcing them. I'm just wondering that. So right now you segregate detainees. If somebody is positive, you find ways where you detain and separate to keep them from the general population as a way to try to contain the spread. And so say we find a way that we can get those who need the vaccinations vaccinated, or we can change the process and get it done. I'm just questioning, for those, you may have a population where a third of them say, I'm not going to get vaccinated. So I'm just asking, is herd immunity within your contained spaces, is that realistic to even think about? I don't know. I'm not saying you may know the answer, but I'm just hoping that you may have given it some thought.
Well, I think the same principles apply in terms of who's received a vaccination, even in that environment. I'm just indicating that that's the thing that's forefront is getting them the vaccination. And so that would be policy and politics. And then the willingness of them to take that vaccination, that's the critical point. But I support it wholeheartedly. And if you can accomplish that, I'm on board.
And then the last question I got, and they tied together, and I'm trying to understand, and Pam, you can help me on this one also, because I want to understand what sort of mental health do you provide for the population, and what sort of monitoring? So for instance, is there a time frame where you start to see a change in morale in the population where it's predictable that they were going to become frustrated and take actions into their own hand? Was there a spot along there where you were able to ascertain that? And then same thing is, what is the morale like currently right now? Or is there, and again, overall, the mental health is a big one for me, Pam. So I don't know how mental health under COVID and under the CDC rigs and the stuff you provided, if it provided for mental health, and to what extent should they or should they not be doing it?
That was a question for me?
Yes.
Okay, I would simply indicate that, first of all, maybe you'll find the answers complete on our website, where we have the entire medical contract posted. So you can see all the services that are provided, and know that we are nationally accredited. in both medical and mental health at both facilities. We did consider, because I have psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health professionals, we did consider that aspect of even just COVID in general and what that impact would be relative to the restrictions that were in place, and as well as just what does it mean to be dealing with the issue of COVID in that population. And we've increased our interactions with our mental health staff with detainees. Could I have predicted that it would play out in this fashion? I could only predict that the potential was there. Can't predict human behavior, but we tried to put in place things that would offset that. I would also indicate that the people that are incarcerated are their reactions to various things are similar to what happens in the community. I would expect no different. The one thing that is different, where in the community, they may peacefully protest or march or argue with someone at a restaurant, and there are people in the jail that would want to carry it much further. There's no such thing as a peaceful protest in a jail.
Well, I mean, I want us to be clear, because the reality is that we do need to look forward. I just want to keep us on task. We do need to look forward and be able to see what can we do now to move forward. But as Alderman Boyd said, one of the things that we do need to look at is the incident, the protest that did take place in February, and the other two subsequent actions that took place. And our charge is to try to investigate and review what took place leading up to that. And so I want us to be careful. I want us to be mindful that all of this is being recorded. And so when we talk about peaceful protests, the reality, how you define peaceful protest may be also a matter of opinion as well. So I just want us to be careful about that, because what the commissioner says is peaceful protest, or what is not peaceful protest, somebody may argue that you had all these people who committed the civil disobedience, the security guard was hurt, no inmate was hurt. Some will argue that what happened was a protest, although it was not nonviolent because of the guard, that they were not striving to be peaceful. So I want us not to go too far into the investigation moving backwards. I don't want us to get too far in that until we get to the point, Commissioner and task force members, when Brian kind of gives us that schedule on when we begin the investigation as it relates specifically to those three incidents. I just don't want us to go too far.
Mr. Chairman, I won't, and again, Commissioner Glass, I'll make my question more simpler. Maybe I didn't do it right. So here's what I'm trying to understand. Are you telling me that the facility does not have the ability, staff or whatever, to understand the temperature and the moral temperature of the detainees, and not able to ascertain that it is growing and that it potentially is now where they're going to rely on other means of trying to get some attention? I'm just trying to understand. And two is, what was the mental health that's been ascertained of some of the people before, and where is it now? Because even though we're together now, and you don't read nothing in the news, and there's no flames or nothing, and there may be some instantaneous changes that have happened, it still may not be sufficient enough where the unsettlement has been quelled. It may be a little quiet, it may be steady, but that there's still a lot of discontent and sentiment about the same things that drove us to that point in the first. So I think that I will hope that they're able to gauge, staff is able to gauge and listen, these folks are, things ain't going right. Folks are getting upset. And I'm asking you, is that, or am I being impractical to assume that you have that ability.
So all I can do is try to respond truthfully and openly when you ask me a question, particularly when it has to do with perhaps opinion. I would indicate to you that it's difficult to respond to the first part of your question because it requires me to reach a conclusion. The conclusion that perhaps we did something to cause them to react. I'll let the task force make their determination about how we got here today. In reference to where we are in terms of the temperament, often I speak to classification staff, custody staff, people working with the detainees. What's the tone of the facility? What have you heard? What have you observed? What is the behavior? That is a common approach that I have prior to COVID, but in general. And sometimes, you know, having worked in this field a long time, as have my staff, I can look at a camera, see interactions that are occurring and say, something's not right there. Let's see what's going on. In terms of actual mental health, I have professionals and they look at that issue and they give me information and they are free to react, interact in any way they see fit to address mental health of the detainees. And in fact, they often assist with staff. In terms of where we are today, it's still very pensive. It will take quite some time for both the detainees that were involved, those that were not involved, those that maybe were forced to be involved, as well as staff to overcome what that experience was.
Commissioner, I don't want to cut you, I don't want to cut you off, and I do, first of all, we appreciate your candid response. I do want to be able to move on because we're going to have some time to revisit this, but two things before we ask Pam if she has any closing comments on the report. But our job as a task force is also to hear your side, not discounting it, not anything, but we still have another side that we do have to hear because something happened. And regardless to where we might be now and where the temperature is now, it's our task to be able to review the days and maybe weeks leading up to the disturbance to make a determination by talking to all the principals as to what their mindset was, what the environment was, not what we're doing now, but what may or may not have been done. And so all I'm saying is that we need to be able to meet with both sides and then to revisit where Commissioner Glass is. So I don't want us to get too far on one side where we haven't yet had an opportunity. We've got a lot of people to talk to, and we're committed to making sure we speak to everybody. So my apology, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to make sure that if we have any more questions to Ms. Walker, we ask those questions and then we get to Brad, because I think Brad is going to set out a procedure and a process where we'll have an opportunity to speak to both sides and kind of work backwards so that we're able to move forward if the task force is all right with that. So Ms. Walker, if you would.
May I conclude, Reverend?
Yes, sir. Mr. Glass.
Just a brief
go ahead.
sentence.
Go ahead,
If I
Commissioner.
may. Yeah, I would say again, I'm just answering questions that are posed.
Understood.
And even though I've said more than once, I've been doing this a long time, so I know something about corrections. But one thing I do know is I can learn and be taught by anyone. So I'm not going to disvalue anything that this task brings forward, and especially if it will help me do a better job.
And Mr. Chairman, I would just say this also real quick, is that I think having an understanding of whether staff has the ability to whether the environment morale is at a point that something like this may happen, if that's even possible to do. I just think it's important to know if it is, and if it is possible, what did it fail in this particular instance, to see what was coming and so forth and so on. So that's why I asked the question.
Agreed.
I'm not assuming anything. That's why I asked, but I will ask the question.
Agree. Thank you, Dr. Pruitt. Alderman Vaccaro, is this in reference to Ms. Walker's report?
Yeah,
Your
yes, it
question?
is. Yes, it is germane to her report.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Pam, you had said about the COVID vaccination. There, I guess, but the people that are in there with health issues and that are over the age of 65 would certainly qualify.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we should have the ability to vaccinate those. I understand the rules. I get the different tiers. I'm in the one that's a giant mess, age, and health and everything else. But I would think that if we could get, not names, but if there's a percentage of people that qualify, I think they should be signed up and put on the list for vaccinations. I mean, I would think if they qualify, they qualify.
Well, the CDC recommendation is that the detainee facilities should follow the state jurisdictional phase priority.
I understand. So-
And they also recommend that detainees be vaccinated at the same time as staff. So I think it's unclear. And I think what it would require is for the city health department to make an official request to the state that they want people in the facility as they fall in the phases, that vaccine be shipped somehow to the city or the facility to vaccinate those people as they fall in the phases. And the state can deny that, but I think it can be requested.
Well, if it were me and someone that I cared about was in there and they died because they were denied a vaccination shot, the state better have plenty of money for me and my family, because I would think they would have the same rights that I have as well as everyone else has that's been signing up all over creation to make sure to protect ourselves. I mean,
Yeah, I can't speak to the legal issues, but I can tell you as of Friday when I checked, that is not happening in the state correctional facilities. They are not vaccinating anyone who's a detainee, even if they're in phase 1A or 1B.
All right, we're gonna move on. Pam, can you follow up with that? And one of the things that I would ask, there's an equity advisory committee in the governor's office that has been created to look at special circumstances, special designations. I would hope that this whole equity advisory committee, and particularly in our communities, minority communities, Black communities, and so if we can look at that to see if there is some way to make that the city health department, the mayor's office, that someone can make that request, and we can just follow up with that. Can we take a look at that?
I'll check around.
Yes, Alderman. Is this a question?
Yeah, I'm still in the same questions, just a little bit further, but we're not a state-run facility. So, I mean, I think the city's liable for the people in there. It's our.
The state though owns, here's the distinction. The state owns the vaccine. So we only get vaccine that they tell us we can have. And I don't know if you've seen the press this week, but the governor's all over the place saying, you better not give it to somebody that doesn't deserve it or you'll get punished. Follow my phases. So it's a political decision that I don't think we can necessarily drive. I will check other jurisdictions as well and see if any other local entities are vaccinating jail detainees. But then I think we're going to have to figure out how to seek clarification and let our desires be known that we want that to happen.
We're gonna have to move on, task force members, and I don't want to stymie, but if we have any other questions, please just send those to Ms. Walker. We do want to move on to Brad. Brad's going to help us to understand the process of moving forward. And so Brad,
Yes,
you now have the floor.
thank you. Just a couple updates. As you know, through the emails, I did submit the initial data request, and that was quite large and comprehensive. And at this point, that's being reviewed because, as we probably all know, there's data release laws and there's pending litigation that they have to sort through to see what can and can't be released at this point. And I will continue to follow on that. But with that said, I would tell you that the CJC website has a significant amount of information for us to get started. The policies and procedures are on there for a starting step. The service contracts are on there. There's some population data and program data, as long as with their monthly reports that have the incidents and those things in there. So that gives us plenty of data to review between now and next week to at least get started, and we'll continue to follow on that data request. Number two is that Brian and I have worked back and forth as far as a press release or / posting regarding the public input. And maybe Brian can help me out here with that, but we've got that honed in, and that will include use of the website and the task force email for those to sign up for those Zoom meetings, which will take place next Monday afternoon and evening. Brian, did you share that memo, or can we put that on a screen, or do we not have that ability?
I will send it via email right now to the task force.
Okay. We should probably approve that and then just discuss on how that's going to get. I'd recommend it go out to the media so everyone has a chance to see that and be able to provide their input. But I guess that's up to the task force, how you want to distribute that to the public.
Can't Brian share his screen? I mean, you have that ability, right?
Sure. I just wanted to make sure that it was approved by the board before it was publicized.
Because remember this, and I don't think there's a problem with that, because that particular press release is to seek public input. So go ahead and do that. Once again, we'll submit everything to people through email for your review prior to our meetings. But I think that Brian is going to try to put that up. It's a simple press release, just a who, what, why, where, when.
All right, give me 1 second. I'll pull it up.
And Mr. Chairman, while he's doing that, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, you surely can. Yes, sir.
When issues that come up as relates to our deliberations here, and they cross over to areas that, at least areas in my particular instance, where there are significant civil rights and human rights issues, I think, in some ways, I have a fiduciary responsibility to act on them in some capacity at the federal, especially at the federal level. And so I just want to make sure that I at least indicate to you and to the rest of the task force that, and prime example, Mr. Chairman, we filed a complaint with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services about about the vaccination plan that the state has. Currently, we filed that about a week ago. And I'll be honest with you, we're going to amend it and add this issue as relates to age and preconditions being denied to detainees is a lot larger than just the Justice Center down there. I mean, because you're telling me that the state of Missouri is telling folk simply because they're detained, and in some cases, they haven't been convicted of a crime yet, that they lose all of their rights under this under this pandemic, rights that everybody else has as relates to age and precondition. That's significant for me, and we're not going to just sit by and watch it. And so I don't want I want the committee to think that I'm unilaterally trying to make some action and this and that, but when this stuff overlaps and falls in my lap like this, I don't have a choice but to act.
Pam, you ready to respond?
Yeah, let me add one thing. I just checked with a contact out in the county real fast just to see what they're doing. And she said they have vaccinated all the staff that wanted it. And they are offering it to detainees that meet tier 2 criteria for high-risk medical conditions. So they've
Which
gotten permission to offer it to, so without, regardless of age, you know, I think she went down to tier 2. So I will clarify this, but they're probably doing everyone in phase 1, 1B, and people with health conditions. So that's where you're trying to get. And if they're letting them use their vaccine that way, they should let the city.
Thank you. We'll follow up. Brian, do
Reverend
you?
Gray,
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, perhaps I wasn't clear, but I did indicate that we have, through the Public Safety Director, Judge Edwards, developed a list of people that are over 65, pregnant people, and also those with underlying conditions, came up with a list of 65 eligibilities. And we are currently in the process of asking them if they want to be vaccinated. Our plan is to vaccinate them Thursday.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Brian, are you prepared to put up, can we put it on the screen?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Okay.
I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna share this and I'm gonna share. Let me know if everyone can see that.
Yep.
All right, so this is the draft public release. I'm happy to read through it if you like.
Yes, go ahead, please.
All right, for immediate release from the Corrections Task Force. As part of the review, I'll make some corrections as I go. As part of the review of the City Justice Center, CJC Jail, the Corrections Task Force is offering citizens an opportunity to provide information either in writing or in person via scheduled Zoom meetings. Due to time constraints, there will be limited time slots available for 10-minute Zoom presentations. Therefore, written typed communication is recommended. Zoom meetings will be part of a public meeting. Written communication must be received or postmarked by February 22nd, 2021. The role of the task force will be to read and or listen to the information provided and take the information under consideration when conducting the CJC review. The task force will not be able to respond to the information provided in any way. While the task force will conduct a general review of the CJC operations, immediate focus will be on the following topics. 1, to investigate the alleged concerns and complaints regarding food, water, temperature, and clothing. 2, the need to begin moving cases through the 22nd Judicial Circuit and any other measures to address the isolation and uncertainty resulting from the halting of court cases for nearly 1 year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. 3, to become appraised of the urgent building and equipment needs of the facility, which is approximately 20 years old. Citizens may provide information through the following methods. Online comment. This is the link of the Corrections Task Force, which has not yet gone live, but it will shortly. And 2, via mail, Corrections Task Force, 1200 Market Street, room 402, St. Louis, Missouri, 63103. Zoom meetings will be held on Monday, February 22nd from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. To register for a Zoom meeting time slot, please contact the Corrections Task Force email at cjctaskforce@stlouis-mo.gov. Time slots will be granted first come, first serve, and you will receive a confirmation email of your slot. That is the entirety of the release. And this date is based upon that recommended by Brad Hom.
Anybody have any questions?
So this is Brad again. I'm presuming then, Brian, that we can get that out this afternoon or early in the morning.
Sure, absolutely.
Given that, we're backed up a little bit, so we're only giving them now a half a week. I mean, we'll still do the Zoom meetings, but do you want to expand the deadline for written? Do you want to put that like the middle of next week and give them a couple more days, or you want to leave it where it's at?
It is totally up to the task force. I'm just helping.
I'm gonna suggest, unless anybody has an objection, we leave it where it is. I think people are following this. They want us to move with a sense of urgency. People are following it. And so I think and there are a lot of people who have indicated that they have submitted information. So if the task force has no objections, let's keep that date. Does anybody have any questions or corrections or additions that they'd like to see included in the press release? As I said, it's a very simple who, what, when, where, why.
I have some comments.
Yes.
Number one, I think we should be clear that all the comments should be specific to CJC. So there's a lot of talk about the workhouse, so I want to make sure that these comments were specific to CJC because that's the task at hand, and I think we should be clear with everybody on that. Brian, I didn't see an opportunity to send an email, or you just wanted to go through this portal as far as comments.
This portal would be ideal. I mean, the task force email is also provided but the portal would be ideal.
Okay, all right, cool. The last thing is, in order to give more people an opportunity to speak, I think 10 minutes is way too long. Having been involved in the public comment periods at the Board of Aldermen for 18 years, you're not going to get through many people with 10 minutes. I think something reasonable is anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. Maybe somebody else, maybe the senator could weigh in on it, on her, experience in Jefferson City on how they dealt with public comment. But trust me, 10 minutes is way too long. And some people are they didn't get a chance to speak because you ran out of time.
Well, let me interject here. I respectfully disagree with the alderman from the 22nd Ward pertaining to those individuals who's in the workhouse. I mean, who may have concerns about the workhouse not being able to speak towards that. And the reason that I say that simply because this is a universal problem. And this problem have just lingered over to the workhouse. Many of those individuals that have been involved, that were involved with the uprise, they are now there. So we're talking about individuals that was involved, those individuals who we started off with this task force dealing with and looking at the concerns of. Now many of those individuals are in the workhouse. And so I think if we have anyone that is corresponding with those individuals while there, they should have the right to be able to articulate whatever it is or whatever the concerns may be for those individuals that are there now. May there be, repercussions. May there be those individuals are doing well now. They've decided to be on the narrow, straight and narrow now. But we should be able to hear from individuals who are in communication with those individuals that were or that may have been involved in the uprising that's now at the workhouse. Okay? And I believe that, and I agree with the alderman from the 22nd Ward that we don't need to have a whole 10-minute, testimony. When I think 2 to 3 minutes can get your message, can convey your message strongly about the pros and the cons of what's happening surrounding the uprise. And so I think that if we are able to give individuals 2 to 3 minutes and then allow individuals who may not want to speak to have their a printed testimony that all of us will be able to review. And I think that it would fare well for the committee as a whole, as well as those individuals who want to be able to have their voices heard.
Can I ask a question to both? Number one, I think just for clarification, 3 things. Number one, Alderman, Brad, we do want to make sure that we specify that the testimony is specific to detainees as relates to the Justice Center. So we want to be clear that we are talking about a task force reviewing the Justice Center. So if we could make that clearer, let's try to make that clearer. That's number one. And number two, I think, Senator, it was the understanding, my understanding anyway, that we would interview, regardless of that, if the detainees have been moved, if they were still part of the incident on those 3 days, regardless of where they are, if they are in St. Louis, be it the workhouse or the Justice Center, if they were part of that, and we feel that their testimony is relevant, then we would still do the interviews, whether they have been, that whether they are still in the Justice Center or if they've been moved. So I don't think that we were going to limit our review based upon location. So just to be clear, that was the understanding, that any detainee that had information as it relates to those three incidents, that regardless of where they are, we were going to work on interviewing them if they were so inclined to be interviewed. So that was,
I thought we were on public comments here, not interviewing detainees. Where are we here?
no, I think that even the public comments, I thought our understanding.
So let me make it practically
Go ahead.
clear what I'm trying
Go
to
ahead.
say to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that I don't believe that we should only allow for individuals who's testifying
Mhm.
on behalf of the Justice Center downtown to testify. One, I also believe that we have individuals who are no longer there, who are at the workhouse now, and their voices need to be heard by way of some organization. And if that organization wants to be able to discuss what's happening within the workhouse, that is a direct correlation to the quality of health of those individuals that move there, they should be able to have that articulated. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand clearly. I guess I'm just saying, and task force, please weigh in.
And that's just my opinion, you know.
No, I understand. No, I understand.
but-
I just want to stay close to as close to possible to the reason that we were created is to investigate CJC. And you are correct, and I agree that any detainee that was involved with the three incidents that took place at CJC, regardless of where they are and who it is that is going to speak on their behalf,
Yeah.
they should be able to speak on their behalf as it relates to those incidents and our mandate. So I'm not disagreeing at all. But if as it relates to facility, the three incidents, as far as being apprised to the urgent building and equipment needs, that's CJC. The cases, the court cases that have not been heard, those are the detainees that have been in CJC. Water, food, temperature, clothing, those are detainees that have been in CJC, regardless if they've been moved as a result. You're absolutely right. I think that our mandate dictates that we interview them. If they are open to be interviewed, we receive their testimony, and if not from them, from other individuals and organizations, but within the scope of CJC. That's my understanding of our mandate. And if I'm wrong, please somebody correct me.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the notice does say that the purpose of the task force is specifically for CJC. Just wanted to point that out, but I would recommend that we do change that to 5-minute intervals. Because there may, 2 or 3 may be short, because you may have organizations that are actually
Right.
they might be speaking for a group, an advocate type position. They may have a longer presentation, but that does double the amount of people that we'll hear from.
So if we say 2 to 3 minutes individual, 5 minutes organization,
I guess for scheduling purposes, I think Brian's going to be tasked with the scheduling. I would
Okay.
leave it at 5 consistently.
okay.
So that's only gonna be 12 people an hour. And if you got 30 or 40 people signed up,
Right.
you're not gonna, you're talking 12 people an hour. 10 minutes, you're only talking 6, but you're gonna.
No, I think Alderman, we did go down. We did say, I guess the concern that's being raised even from the senator, if you've got an individual, I think someone said 2 minutes. But if you have an organization who may be speaking on behalf of multiple organizations or multiple individuals, I'm asking, do we give an individual testimony 2 minutes and an organization 5? That's the question.
Remember, you've got 4 hours dedicated to this. And
Right.
then we also are encouraging them to put it in writing, so they also have the chance to submit in writing.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have all the confidence in, I think, in printed, I think what you just said we should send out print officially. But I think as chair, you're gonna have the latitude to address this issue as individuals begin to testify. And I have no problem with your ability to do that. And I was gonna also say that I think Alderman Boyd, I think what he was trying to say, maybe, I'm sorry, I can't put words in his mouth, but the thought occurred was that we know there is an ongoing effort and to deal with the closure of the workhouse.
Mhm.
And I think that there may become concern that as this testimony goes, we may start receiving testimony directly related to that particular subject matter. And I think he wants to make sure that we notify people that if it's directly to that subject matter,
Right.
this is not the proper entity to be putting that in front of, because we do have a mandate that is well defined. I think that was a concern. Am I
Yes.
right, Alderman?
Yeah, okay, I see where you're going with that. You're saying that you don't want it to be, even though there's an issue out there with closing the workhouse, you don't want it to be hijacked
Right.
with just that conversation.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to use the word hijack. I just say.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's a figure of speech, you know.
I understand, Senator. But,
Yeah,
okay,
so,
so we're in agreement, and thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Pruitt. So,
Maybe we should have eventually get a task force on closing the workhouse.
Well,
Hey,
okay, so wait, okay, if I can have order, just for a minute, just so we can, so we're in agreement that we can put the press release out. We will make sure that the time frame it's less than 10 minutes, Brad, but we'll make that correction if it's in there. Individual 2 minutes, organization 5 minutes. The chair will monitor that time. We do want to make sure that in that, task force members may have questions. They may, for clarification to people who are submitting testimony. So we at least want to give some leeway for task force members to be able to ask those questions. So we can agree. Can we agree on before the next thing? Can we agree on the press release with the modification to make sure that we highlight that this is for CJC only? Can we can we get agreement? No disagreement?
Yes.
Moving forward.
I agree.
Okay. Alderman, did you have a question regarding the press release?
Yes, I do.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Is this going to be a hard cutoff in 4 hours? What if I've had these meetings go 6 and 7 hours.
Alderman, we're going to handle it. We can assume or we can project or we can, but we'll get to the meeting. No, we said 2 hours and we're going to keep it to the 2 hours. And as the chair, 4 hours total. And as the chair, I'm going to adhere to what the task force has directed me to do. If we find out that we have a plethora of information, then the task force is going to have to come back and make a determination only when and if it is need be. But for us to try to do that right now is just premature.
What I'm getting at is, if there's still people that want to come and speak or testify, and it goes beyond the 4 hours, are we just going to tell everyone after that, look, we're done, you can't talk, or do we go on?
We're going to deal with that if and when that comes up, Alderman, we can deal with it at that time. And I think it'd be a little bit premature to try to make it a pronouncement on that now.
No, I'm fine. I just very concerned that it might go beyond
Understood.
that. I'm fine with that.
Understood. I've seen some of your meetings. I understand what you're talking about. Okay. Stop it, Jeffrey. Be nice. Brad, you still have the floor.
Okay, the other thing I'm working on is getting a meeting with someone from the courts. I had a discussion with executive assistants from CJCC, so that's in progress. And the final thing is the action plan that I sent out to you all that basically includes for Monday, basically a huddle with us in person to be a brief presentation from myself to provoke some thought, and then we would come to consensus on moving forward in kind of an organized manner with the on-site assessment. And that evening, afternoon and evening would be the Zoom meetings for public input. And then Tuesday.
I think that's ultimately depending on how, or maybe you want to meet.
And then Tuesday and Wednesday would be the on-site assessment. And then the following week again, then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for on-site assessment. And then we'd follow up with, Wednesday, Thursday, and we'd have the final meeting and the judges meeting on that Friday. And then follow up with our reports. And I can tell right now that it's going to be very clear that our reports are going to have some recommendations for, you know, some future activity. There's only so much we're going to be able to get done in the time frame identified. So we'll have to start keeping lists of things that need further attention.
Okay. I have two questions to you. Number one, and it's kind of going back, I just want to get some clarification in reference to the CJCC. I know that the email that you send, task force information request, just to read it, Mr. Glass forwarded the request. At first blush, the task force request appears to implicate several of these actions. These are, city is defending several lawsuits involving its corrections division. Could you just give a summary of that email and to the task force, what are we looking at here? And how much does this affect, from a time constraint point of view, us getting any documentation?
Well, I think that's going to be determined on when the judge makes a decision on what can be released. But I do feel that there's a significant amount of data to get us started on the website as far as policies and procedures. And then as we start our on-site review, it'll certainly come to mind on what other documents that we feel are very important for us to review or see and review. So we'll continue to make those requests, but I'll follow that. But it's really, at this point, I don't know that we have a lot of control over that. I mean, if there is ongoing litigation or investigations, it's common practice to hold that back. So I don't know that we can control that.
Understood. Mr. Glass, Commissioner Gladstone, you indicated we'll complete our review as soon as possible. And I know you can't give us any hard and fast time, but can you give us something a little bit more closer to as soon as possible?
I truly don't think so, because after looking at the information, the document request from Brad Hump, it's pretty extensive. It's a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of, if you will, man hours to gather that information. But I would reiterate what was said by Brad, is that a lot of that information is already online. Monthly reports online, talks about actions taken by us, use of force, disciplinary. Also online is a database, an actual dashboard that talks about a lot of those things that you were asking about. All the contracts are online, all the procedures are online as well. So a lot of that information is already available to the general public and you as well. Online meaning the city website under corrections. So
Okay.
there's a lot of information there, but we have already started looking at that list we received yesterday or whenever that was. We've already started going through that list and see what we can come up with. And then we'll refer to our representative on the CJCC, Judge Durker, to make sure we're not in violation of CJIS or criminal justice information sharing agreements and that kind of information and security concerns.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think that all of us, all of the task force members, all of us, we're all volunteers and most of us have other jobs. So we are trying to do the best we can with what we have. And even though some of this information may be online, for a lot of us to have to, we're committing ourselves to this, as much time and energy and effort as we can. But whatever information, even if it's online, if Brian can only do so much in trying to get us information. So if your staff can accommodate us with that, we don't have, the only staff we have is Brian. And so whatever your staff can do to accommodate those requests, even if they are online, to get them to us so that we don't have to look them up, which would expand what we have to do as a task force. Anything that your staff can do to accommodate that, we really would appreciate it.
Yes,
yeah.
that's noted. I was
Thank you.
simply just trying to indicate that in terms of the need for that information quickly, if
Yeah.
you so desired, it was
Gotcha.
there.
I understand. And I know that Brad, I know Brad will help us, Brian will help us. And Brad, if there's anything in the request that should be used or requested more as a priority, if there's some things that the request of data is for a long-term solution or recommendation versus request for data to try to come up with a short-term solution or recommendation or something that helps us as it relates to the 3 incidents more specifically, if those can be pinpointed, and that might be helpful as well. As Brian said, you're in a better, or Mr. Pruitt said, you're in a better position to help us to weed through the data, to help us to guide us into what we need right now versus what we need tomorrow. And then based upon that, Commissioner Glass and the CJCC can help us determine what we can and cannot have based upon legal ramifications. And so I think the task force understands that. So thank you very much. Brad, just to be clear then, if we're looking at public comments or testimony next week, Monday, and then we're looking at, based on the schedule, you have on the schedule, we've submitted it to Commissioner Glass as relates to moving forward with trying to interview detainees. And I think that one of the things we talked about in an initial conversation with detainees, Commissioner, is trying to identify those wing representatives to see if we could meet with them to have a more general discussion with them on just general conditions, and then move to have a more specific discussion with detainees as relates to the 3 days in question. I think, Brad, is that what we discussed? Is that part of that schedule?
Yes, the initial, and I have not conferred with Mr. Glass about specifics as far as workspace and timing yet, because I wanted to make sure that the action plan was amenable to everyone. But for sure, starting out with wing reps, interviewing them as a group to get some general conditions of confinement information and concerns. And then we have a number of other days that we can interview other people and go back through the facility as far as other areas that we'd like to see again. So that's kind of the crux of the plan. And the only thing I would like to add to the action plan is it's, after speaking briefly with Mr. Glass this week, and we have to understand that the staffing crisis and the crisis they're in, and we need to stick to our plan and schedule and not be having members show up at different times to interview people because they don't have the escorts or the ability to have those detainees come out and be interviewed. Their staffing is at a very, very critical level. As I said, they're actually looking at contracting with assistants. And that's unheard of, even doing nationwide work that I do. So we need to be very respectful of that.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I just think that we want to make sure that in the interviewing of parties, that when we talk about the detainees and the staff as relates to the 3 dates in question, then however, Brad, we want to look at doing that, but we've got 3 specific dates. It may be that some of the detainees and or staff might have information as relates to all 3, but just so that we're clear, and we'll look to you for guidance as to how we break that up and compartmentalize that interviewing process. And so it will bring us to, the quorum, how many people we start with. If we have 4 people in place as a forum, can we agree as a quorum that if we have 4 people in place at any given time, based upon our meetings, based upon our interviewing, based upon our tour, if we have those 4 people in place, that we can begin with 4 people, which would constitute a quorum. Can we agree on that so that we're not holding anybody up as far as time? Does anybody have a comment, issue, problem with that? Senator?
Do you not see my hand? My hand's been up for a minute now, and
No, ma'am, I didn't see it, but I do
just
see it
trying to
now. I
see
apologize.
that.
I see it.
Oh, okay. No, but no, I don't have any quorums with that, but I wanted to make a comment. Well, I wanted
Yes,
to
ma'am.
pose a question to Brad at some point. My hand's been up for approximately 5 minutes, and I didn't know if you saw that or not.
I didn't because I was writing, so I do apologize. My apologies
Okay.
to you.
Yeah. So, Brad, my question to you is this here. When, for the audience that may be listening, when is the deadline to be able to get the report back to the mayor for our recommendations?
What I had tentatively, this could be certainly extended if we need more time to write the report, but what I had put as our goal would be the 12th
12th of,
March. For
wow,
an initial report.
That's reasonable.
that's reasonable?
Well, like I said,
30.
we made it, we
A
may
full report.
extend that a week because we'll go back and forth a little bit.
Pruitt, can I inquire of Pruitt, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Pruitt, you was about to say that that's reasonable?
If based on the scope of work and the amount of data that's being asked for to analyze it and come back with a final iteration of paint some picture with it in 30 days or less is I mean, I think that's I think that's reasonable. I think to do it less than that, and that's taking in consideration the timing of receiving stuff from the people we asked of it. I think that's reasonable. Yeah.
And I stand corrected. It's March 15th. Monday, the 15th is the date.
And that's Brad
So
for the
March of-
initial report. Go ahead, Senator.
So March the 15th would give us plenty of time to interview the detainees, to interview those individuals that work within the Justice Department. It would give us an ample amount of time to be able to hear from all of those individuals, organizations that wants to testify and be a part of the decision making.
Well,
As stakeholders, that
my opinion is it gives us enough time to interview a sampling and meet the mayor's request of having a product within a few weeks. I don't think it'll allow us to interview every detainee or staff, but it'll give us a very good sampling. And perhaps that would be one of our recommendations, is that further sampling is needed. But if we start out with the wing reps, as Reverend Gray started, I think that's an excellent starting point.
and the reason I'm asking is that, you know, I don't want, and, you know, I commend the mayor for, you know, taking immediate action to try to be able to, you know, rectify whatever the issues, rectify the issues that occurred there. But what I don't want to happen is this to just be a fly by night type of a situation where we come together, we've been here for the last 2 to 3 weeks or whatnot, and then all of a sudden it's over, nothing happens, right? Even to the extent where even if we don't get to a point where we can really get everything done in a manner and a time in which we should, recommendations need to be that we have an extension of this task force for months to come.
That absolutely.
Because this is not like a 2 month, a 3 month situation that is gonna, I mean, this situation basically simmered and it boiled over. And so this is not a situation where we're gonna solve it in 2 months, okay? We can come up with some recommendations, but I would highly recommend that in our recommendations to the mayor, that the mayor understand that there needs to be a continuation ongoing continuation and investigation into not just the Justice Department, but the overall justice system.
Yeah, I like to offer that because the likelihood of changing administrations is very likely, that we should at least honor the request of the current mayor and provide some type of report, even if that report
I totally agree.
unfinished. But I don't think that we would have the authority to just continue based on a request from a mayor who's currently serving. And so we move toward a new mayor, that new mayor, which I highly doubt, would not be interested, but we would have to give courtesy to the new mayor on whether or not that mayor wants to continue the task force.
Yeah, it would just be a recommendation though. I mean, this is nothing set in stone. It would just be a recommendation to continue on.
No, I agree. But what I'm saying is, I think that, in my opinion, that some type of report should be submitted, even if the report says further review of, best practices needs to be done. So that's just my thought based on your, great comments, Senator.
Thank you.
I agree.
And I want to say, just as a chair, just for future reference, and I do apologize to the senator because I'm trying to take notes and pay attention at the same time. So definitely I would never slight you. But in the on the thing, it just has a hand raised thing. So if those of you who want to speak, if you can do it either way, you can wave at me, or you can do the little hand raise thing right here, which lets me know that you want to speak, and that way I won't have any excuse not to recognize you, because I don't want that to be an issue, particularly with the senator. So I don't wait. Listen, because I know. All right, so
see a hand.
It's got a little raised hand. It's got a little raised hand thing. So Dr. Norris, I see your hand up. So go ahead, Dr. Norris.
I'm doing something wrong because I don't see mine. I wanted to do that.
I do. I see Dr. Norris has got his hand up. So Dr. Norris, you have the floor.
You must have a different.
Yes, I would like to offer up regarding this report. Do we need to have a final report or a preliminary report?
Brad, do you want to answer that as the consultant? I mean, I'm under the impression that we're looking at a preliminary report because, as everybody has said, there's no way in the world you're going to do this. We've got less than 2 months. We've all agreed that this is a position of urgency in this, and so if we all agree upon that, and so my understanding is that we were looking at a 30-day window. That was my understanding. And I don't know where I got that from, but Brad, are you saying the same thing? We're looking at a 30-day window.
Yes, and when I spoke to the representative of the mayor's office, they just said several weeks. So I think either way you identify the report, it's going to be the initial primary, whatever you want to call it. But anything to go forward would be simply a recommendation, and that would have to come from the mayor's office after that.
All right, Dr. Pruitt, your hand is up.
Well, wait a second.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Wait a second. I want to make sure, because this is not a matter of semantics.
Right.
In terms of whether it is a preliminary report or a final report, to Senator Nasheed's point. If we put a recommendation, well, I guess the mayor's office is looking at it as a final report, I think is what I hear you saying, Brad.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's what they hear, regardless of what we call it. They're looking at it as a final report.
Yes,
Okay.
but no doubt
Okay.
there'll be recommendations that, given the short time frame, there'll be recommendation that further attention to some areas.
Okay. All right.
All right. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Pruitt, your hand was
Yeah,
up.
I just want to make sure I'm clear. I think that our charge as much as anything else is to be able to create a snapshot in time as relates to what happened, who was involved, and were we able to ascertain whether some of the conditions, underlying conditions that people say contribute to that, whether they exist. do not exist to the best of our ability. And I think that as long as we hear from a good segment of the folks involved and we get all of the data we're asking for, I don't think we're going to have a problem of at least recreating that snapshot in time and say, this is what we think the conditions are. I think, of course, those conditions may require that we make recommendations to say, and you need to fix this and fix that and otherwise. But I think that with what we asking for, we get all of that, and we interview the right folks involved, and let's remember that all the advocacy groups that have been working with with detainees all of the time, we asking them to share with us what they found and what timeline it existed. I think we can paint a picture that says, hey, between this period of time, we had these many complaints, they were this nature, and we can verify them based on just a combination of what we found inside and what we heard from the people who represented those groups, what they heard directly, and other testimony. I think we can paint a pretty good picture.
Okay. All right, we're gonna move on. Brad, did you have anything else that you wanted to share? We're closing in on 4. We've only got a couple of more items we want to get through. We want to be able to do that as quickly as possible. More housekeeping than anything else. So Brad, did you have anything else? Please, everybody has the schedule. I think Brad has sent it out with the invitation to the meeting. Please let us know if you're available to do that. Are we in agreement that four people constitute a quorum? 4 of the task force members, we're in agreement? Okay, we're in agreement with that. Do we want to recommend a vice chair so that, in the event that I'm not available, does anybody want to make a recommendation for someone to serve as vice chair?
I recommend Pam Walker as vice chair.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Jeffrey Boyd, seconded by Alderman Joe Vaccaro, that Pam Walker be the vice chair. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations?
I move to close nominations.
Nominations have been closed. Seeing that there are no more nominations anyway, the chair will declare that Ms. Pam Walker has been selected as the vice chair by acclamation. Amen. Praise God.
Amen.
Thank you, Pam. And the last thing, so the quorum that I think that we are there, I will communicate to the mayor the action steps that we've agreed to take, so that at least as we finish our meeting, she'll have, I guess their office will have the minutes, but at least we want to make sure that her office has the action steps that we've agreed to, so that we stay consistent with what's going on and we can keep everything up to date. The last order of business that I have on the agenda before Varia, we did mention at the last meeting that there was a request to expand the task force to include an ex-detainee and or organization that represents ex-detainees. The floor is open for discussion on that. Anybody want to speak on that?
Well, it was my recommendation. I think it's important. If we can make it happen, let's make it happen.
Anybody else?
Well, I mean, I guess what are we going to ask the mayor to find someone, or how do we find that person?
I've been in touch with them. I've been told that the task force, as Senator said, it's up to us. If we want to make a recommendation that we expand it, if the task force deems that it is valuable to have someone representing ex-detainees on the task force, then that is in the preview of the task force. It is us up to make that determination. My understanding is that if it is an organization, it cannot be an organization that has any legal action against CJC and or the city. And so you can't have any legal problems with the city or with CJC. You can't be suing the CJC. Right. The only organization I have reached out to Expo. Expo, the organizer there is Tracy Staten. They do represent ex-offenders and ex-detainees. It is my understanding that currently they don't have any legal action against CJC or the city, but we can follow up on that. I would recommend, and then we can discuss it. I recommend that Expo, through their executive director, Tracy Staton, be invited to serve on the task force. That would be my recommendation. Obviously, that would have to be moved and seconded, agreed upon by the task force.
I'd like to have some conversation about that.
Yeah.
Because Mr. Chairman, I'm confused as to, are we asking for an ex-detainee, which is a person who has been detained in the criminal justice system? Or are we asking for an advocate of a detainee? Because there are two different.
The first, we're asking for an organization that represents ex-offenders or ex-detainees. And so, yeah.
That's not what the agenda calls for. It says ex-detainee.
Okay, so
that's a person.
Yes.
And I personally will be uncomfortable with I think it's more valuable that we have somebody who has an experience in the system than an advocacy group. Because, and not to disparage an advocacy group, but I could certainly work for an advocacy group and have a listening session with a bunch of people who have been in the criminal justice system and be an exceptional advocate. But there's nothing better than having somebody who's actually experienced the system to speak for themselves and maybe other people.
Then can I then amend my recommendation to state then that we approach Expo, who is an reputable organization that represents ex-offenders and ex-detainees, and ask them if they would submit a name of an ex-detainee, that they would submit that name to us, and then based upon their recommendation to us, we can make a determination at our next meeting. Would that be acceptable, Alderman?
But what about other organizations that are working on behalf of detainees? I mean, do you slight them by singling out one particular organization? I'm asking the question.
Yeah, and I have no problem.
Want to do would be fine with me.
Have no problem with responding. The concern that was raised is that the reason I said Expo, because with other organizations who represent criminal justice reform as a whole, the concern is that those organizations cannot have any pending action.
Okay.
The only one that I know of so far is Expo.
Okay.
They do not have any pending action.
Okay.
And if they're recommending a person, as you indicated, a person that we would I guess value their experience and expertise in identifying someone who can meet the task of representing ex-detainees on the task force.
What do you mean dependent? What do you mean by pending action?
Lawsuits.
Okay.
Yeah. Conflict of interest. Conflict of interest.
All right. Not if they protested and then now they want to come to the table.
No. Lawsuits. Yeah, that was my understanding.
All right. So anyway, yeah, I understand.
I move based on your recommendation, Mr. Chair.
I second.
All right, been moved by Mr. Pruitt, who seconded, I'm sorry, was that Alderman Boyd?
Yes.
That we would approach Expo, ask them if they would recommend an ex-detainee to represent, to be a representative, to be part of the task force. Any further question on the motion? Yeah.
I will question.
Question, yes, ma'am.
So the mayor would have to appoint that person, right?
It's my understanding that we have.
Okay.
We're independent. We have the authority to do that.
Okay.
To expand the task force.
Okay.
I like that big old smile that the senator has. Big old smile. I know. I see just a big old smile. There's a big old smile. Listen,
leave Jamila alone.
I'm not. Hey, listen. I'm trying to get through this meeting without any problem. You know me, man.
Mr. Chair, that's the agenda. Can I move that we adjourn?
Yeah. So first of all, can we vote on that? So if there's no further question, are you ready for the question? All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I oppose.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Any other business? to come
Yes.
before the, yes, Alderman.
What about the approval of the minutes? Did we do that or did they get past me?
I thought we did, and I could be wrong. Can we
don't
get,
think
just in
so.
case,
We did
can
not.
can we get a motion to approve the minutes with necessary correction?
I move to approve the minutes dated February the 12th, pending any necessary corrections.
All right,
Second.
Second,
been probably moved by Alderman Boyd, seconded by Senator Nasheed. You heard the motion. You ready for the question? All in favor, say aye.
I
All
Aye.
opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Any other business to come before the task force? Any other business?
can we add to next week's agenda to talk about this letter a little bit more in depth from with comments from Durker and some other folks, because that first sentence in this one paragraph, I think is something that we really need to talk about because it speaks to the fact that the CJC is a multi-functional and have multi-agencies involved in it at different aspects, and that the corrections is not singly out there on its own as relates to the facility itself. And so I would love to have a better understanding in the future from Mr. Glass as relates to how does any of that come into play with the stuff we're looking at. I'd sort of like to hear from him to see if that's the case.
Can we ask that any task force member, if there's anything that you want on the next agenda, if you'll send that to Brian, any item that you think should be on the agenda, please send that to Brian. That way we can get it out to everyone ahead of time and make sure that if there are people that we need to contact for clarification, that we're able to get them to make sure that they're available as well. So if you have any items for the agenda, please send that to Brian. Any other business to come? Yes, Senator.
Yes, just for the purpose of the listening audience or those that are viewing today's meeting, can Brad recap what it is we're looking to do tangible next week?
I can. Again, we'll have a huddle as a team on Monday, basically talking about how we're going to go forward with the on-site. I just have a presentation that I will give you, and hopefully it's going to provoke some thoughts, some questions that you're going to want to have answers, some things that you're going to want to see. And before we leave the meeting at noon, it's my hope that we will have an agreement on how we move forward for the on-site assessment. That afternoon and evening, we would have the Zoom meeting presentations. And the following 2 days, we will be spending on-site, doing the on-site assessment, starting with our detainee wing representatives interviews and moving forward from that. And then the following week, we have some on-site assessment as well as a meeting with the judicial, and then a final debriefing of our group before we move into the report writing process.
Okay, thank you, Brad.
You bet.
All right. Well, thank you very much. If there's no other business, I'll ask Brian that if he would include the action steps from this meeting with the action steps from our previous meeting, and we'll submit that information to the mayor's office as soon as we incorporate the two. So if there's no other business, I know that we did close our meeting the last time with prayer, and I'm going to ask the Right Reverend Charles Norris if he would be so kind as to close this meeting out in prayer. Dr. Norris, you still with us? Okay, I see his face.
I think he's muted.
Oh, Dr. Okay, do we have him?
Okay, I'm sorry, what did you say?
Could you just close us out in a brief prayer if you be so
Oh,
kind?
yes. Okay, no problem. All right, if all hearts and minds are clear. Oh God, we thank you for this time. The storms may have been across the country and our nation, but God, we ask that you continue to calm the storm, continue to lead and guide us, continue to direct us, continue to give us the clarity, the wisdom, the understanding, and oh God, even the long suffering as is needed to continue the task at hand. And we'll be careful to give you the praise, the glory, and the honor. It It is in your son, Jesus the Christ, we pray, we believe, and we thank you, God. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everyone, and we hope to see you soon. Everybody, please be safe.
Yes.
Yeah, be safe.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.